and Kate Foggon, who thought about the life of an occupational therapist in children's therapy services. So that they'll tell you a little bit more about themselves. Okay, can everybody hear me? Brilliant. Okay, so just before we start, it's really helpful to find out who our audience is. So, have we got any students at all, or apprentices? Just a show of hands. Thank you, quite a few of you, fantastic. Anyone working in the NHS at all? Lovely. In adult services? Anyone in children's services? Oh, lovely. KCC? Anyone working in independent practice? Anything I've missed? Okay, thank you. Well, welcome, and it's thank you for the opportunity for us to share what we do in our role within children's therapies. So this is Kate, I am Jo, we are occupational therapists within children's therapies, and we work for Kent Community Health, so that's the Primary Care Trust, and we cover Canterbury, Thanet, the north, which is Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells, Gravesend, Dartford, Canterbury, Thanet, and then the other areas of Kent are provided by East Kent Hospitals Trust, and then Medway are Medway. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you an overview of our service and locality, what the clinical specialisms are, the clinical pathways, what approach we use to therapy. We're going to share our resources website, and we're going to give you some examples of clinical practice. Okay, so what does our service do? Essentially, we are a community-based service for children and young people, 0 to 19, who need specialist help in a range of areas. So our aim is to support children and young people in developing their skills to their full potential so that they can participate in their life, essentially. Now, if you look at that, you think, oh my goodness, that would be the entire population. So we do have quite a strict service criteria to ensure that we can meet the needs of those who need our service the most. So, who makes up our team? We work in a very integrated way, and as you can see, we've got CYP stands for child and young person. So we've got the child and young person in the centre of everything that we do, and we've got occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and speech and language therapists. Now, within those professions, we have clinical specialisms, clinical leads that will take a lead in a particular clinical interest, if you like. And I'll just go through that in a moment, so just hold on to that. We've got care coordinators. Those are for children and families where typically they have care coordinators for when a child has received a new diagnosis, typically in early years or when they're infants. And the idea is that they would support the child and family to coordinate their care, offer support to families, arrange appointments and arrange team around the child meetings to ensure that the child focus is kept. We also have therapy assistants. They are generic, so they cover therapies around speech and language, OT and physio to ensure that we have a truly integrated approach. But obviously within that we have therapy assistants who have special interests within particular areas, and we do what we can to support them with their special interests as well. we cannot forget the administration team. They are absolutely vital to the running and operation of our service. And we have recently, when I say recently, the last couple of years, appointed some resource makers. And these are colleagues who may have some additional needs or who have had difficulty in finding employment. So we have a couple of people in the east, so covering Canterbury and Thanet, and they create resources for us to use with our children and young people. So that might be, for example, a communication book, a visual timetable, now and next boards, to ensure that we can create individualised and bespoke resources for the children and families that need it, and they are a great addition to our team. Oh, sorry, can we just go back a second? So within that, we have our team leads that support us with the day-to-day running, and then on the right, we will have our professional leads. So we have our OT, physio and speech and language professional leads that will look after our clinical development and looking towards the future and our competencies. And then we would have our locality managers that would oversee the management of the location. I wanted to put this slide up to just give you an idea of the breadth of the work that we do. So, working with colleagues and partners outside of the service, here are just a few of the groups of people that we work with. So we've got the CAT team, we have the paediatricians, we've got charities. At the moment I'm particularly working with the Kent Association for the Blind. Psychology, but within psychology we've got educational psychologists and clinical psychologists. Product advisors and reps, which is one of the reasons why we're here today, so we can catch up with them and get updated with what equipment is available. The short breaks team, obviously parents, families, carers, social care, education to include colleges, schools, nurseries, sometimes universities when we're looking at transition. We work with the local mental health trusts as well. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's those who we may typically work with.
So recently we've started working with this model, which is in best practice recommendations from the Royal College of OTs. So it looks at the different levels that we would support the children, and what the pyramid showing you is the amount of children at each level. So what we believe is every child should access universal support, so that's in terms of education of those around them and how to best support the child. We have a children's therapy resource website which we have where we upload lots of videos to it, we have some training on it, and we encourage educational staff to access that, parents to access that, grandparents. There's lots of good things on that in terms of how to support their children. Within that universal level, we also do trainings with schools, we might do drop-in sessions. So, and we also have some different pathways which are the sensory differences pathway and the motor coordination pathway, which I'll show you a bit more in minutes as well. Then our targeted level would be more direct support or with the child, or we might do some small groups, so sometimes we run groups and we invite children to those groups with some of their peers who might have similar conditions, and we run them for a period of time. So it might be they have a 6-week block with us to work on a skill, so they might be working on something like dressing, or they might be working on something like anything. Eating, cutlery, lots of functional skills that we work on. And then we have our children at specialist level, so they will tend to be the ones with more complex needs, and we'll be doing bespoke therapy programs with them, one-to-one sessions. We might be doing some moving and handling training with the parents, and that's that direct intervention that we do.
And just to add, these would be the children where they would be having prescribed equipment, specialist seating, they might require specialist beds, so it's very complex, profound needs.
So we have clinical pathways, as Jo said earlier, so that's each of our child, when we have a referral, their triage, and we look at what pathway they fit into depending on their needs. It's not diagnosis-based, whether we see a child, it's needs-based. And we call our pathways level 1 to 5, but looking at them in terms of the support that we offer, the children, some of the children will sit at a universal level, so we have pathways which are called our motor coordination pathway, which are for children who have difficulties with sort of complex activities. We have our sensory differences pathway, and we're developing a new developmental coordination disorder diagnosis pathway joint with our paediatricians. We will then have the sort of targeted and specialist children who sit at what we call a level 3. So they'll come into clinic, but it might be that if we identify a therapy goal with them, we'd then do a block of therapy with them. And they're reviewed quite regularly. They might have some mobility difficulties, they might have cerebral palsy but be able to, like, higher functioning. So we'll come into, Jo said about the GMFCS there, so we're going to touch on that on the next slide, I think. And then we have our specialist children, so our level 4 children are generally allocated to a therapist. They won't be clinic children. They have much more profound and complex disabilities, and they have a long-term need. They might have a lot of specialist equipment that we're needing to assess them for, and they tend to need a high level of input. They might be going in and out of hospital for treatments, and we'll be needing to do therapy blocks afterwards. And then we have our level 5 children, which is children only stay on level 5 for a very short period of time. So those children are children that need a very short, intensive, it's more of an emergency. So if they're discharged from hospital, or if they've been given Botox and we need to do a therapy session with them, they will be on that level 5 pathway so that we can do that quickly, but then they would move back down to a level 4 or 3 pathway. So we've just put in here, this is the GMFCS scale, which you might all be aware of. It's a classification system for cerebral palsy, so it just shows all the levels of different abilities of the child, and it's a classification that we use, so between professionals, if we're applying for a piece of equipment, we would say in our report what GMFCS level they are, so that the person who's reading our panel application can picture the child. But we can use, it's only standardised for children with cerebral palsy, but we can use it to talk about other children as well. And we just put it in there because we thought it's quite a nice indicator of the different levels of need that we see, the different levels of abilities that we see. So, and Jo said earlier we have clinical specialisms within all our services, so each therapy profession will have different clinical specialisms, and we've just touched on the main ones in occupational therapy and physio. So we have sensory coordination leads, we have upper limb leads, we have life-limiting equipment and neonatal, and within physio we have respiratory, orthotics, life-limiting equipment and aquatics, sport and community participation. And really our role when we are a clinical specialist lead is to support our colleagues in developing those skills, or if they have particularly complex children that they need our support with, we would go and joint work with them, but we also do training across the profession to all our colleagues, so that we're really upskilling. We're all taking responsibility to upskill in a different clinical area. This is our resource website. So it's the one that I talked about earlier. It has a lot of really lovely videos, it has some training. You can also refer children from this website, so do check it out. It's called the Children's Therapy Pod.
And that's just another slide.
now Joe's going to talk about a few case studies.
Okay, so I've just got 3 examples where children are on a different pathway, just to illustrate what we've been speaking about. So this is a young person on a level 3 pathway, or would be seen in clinic. So we have a child who's age 11 and she attends mainstream school. She's in year 6 at school and she's about to go to secondary school. So it's a really exciting time in her life. She does have cerebral palsy, which has affected one side of her body. She is able to walk, she's able to run, and she's able to participate in school life. When we saw her for a review clinic a few weeks ago, there was that moment of, right, so what your goals are, what are you looking to achieve, what do you want to be able to do now that you're transitioning to secondary school? And there was a moment of, oh, I'm going to have to wear a shirt and do my buttons, because in primary school I can get away with wearing a polo shirt, and oh, my dad does my hair, oh, I can't do my hair. And it was just a moment of, I'm going to have to start being a little bit more independent. So there was the young person saying that, but also dad was going, okay, I'm going to need to start stepping back now. So it was quite a moment in the session. So we identified some goals, and these were to tie up her hair in a ponytail using her scrunchie. She wanted to do up the buttons on her new school shirt, and she wanted to tie the laces on her trainers. So what interventions do we use? Now, do we have the internet here? No, okay. That's a shame, no worries. If anyone wants to take a photo of this slide, please do, because this is a 3-minute YouTube video around the intervention approach that we are currently using with this young person. It's called the Co-op, or the Cognitive Orientation to Occupational Performance. It sounds a bit of a mouthful. Has anyone heard of it at all? Okay. So it's a goal-driven, strength-based approach where you identify very specific goals and you facilitate the child to problem solve and to create a plan so that they are able to complete the task successfully. We use guided discovery, we ask, we don't tell them the answer. So a lot of that is around educating the family not to intervene, not to do for them, not to tell them what to do, but to guide the child or young person to the answer that's right for them in order for them to complete the task. So we're currently doing a block of therapy, and what she decided to do, we worked on goal number 1 and goal number 3, and she wanted 4 weeks to practice her plan. So we created the plan, we supported her to create her plan in the session, and then she wanted a month to practice the plan, to then come back to review that, and then she could work on doing up the buttons. I'd love to let you know how she gets on, but we're in the middle of it. Okay, so this is a young person on our level 4 pathway. So this little chap, he's 8, he's in foster care, and he had an acquired brain injury. And he is the GMF level 5 equivalent. So if we go back, can we just pop that to the slide, just so we've got an understanding. So at the bottom, so he's transported in a manual wheelchair in all settings. Children are limited in their ability to maintain anti-gravity head and trunk postures and controlling leg and arm movements. So very different to the child that we just spoke about. What are this child's goals? So to actively assist in their transfers when participating in their self-care tasks. So that is offering arms when applying slings, and to actively assist with turning once he's on the changing bed. So they are still goals relating to their participation, but as you can see, they are very different. The other goal that we have set is for him to be able to participate in classroom-based activities. And the best way for us to support him within our role is to assess for and provide specialist seating so he's in the appropriate posture to then be able to use his upper limbs to participate within the classroom activities. Okay, and then we have a level 5 pathway. So we have a little chappie who's 14, and he's got a condition called DeGeorge syndrome. So DeGeorge syndrome is a genetic condition, and it can present in a wide variety of symptoms. With him, he experiences hemiplegia, and he has a learning disability. So last month he had Botox injections to his, basically some of the muscles in his left arm, okay, so those are the exact injection sites. So under the level 5 pathway he is undergoing an intensive therapy block, both in clinic and in school, and actually we're going to the play park in a couple of weeks as well, so I'm really excited by that. To support him to work on these goals, he really wanted to do up the zip on his hoodie, he wants to do up the buttons on his school shirt, he wants to climb up the school climb wall again. So he had Botox last year, he responded really well to it, he got a lot more functional movement in his upper limb, and he was able to climb up the school climbing wall, which was absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, the upper limb's got tight again, so he's having Botox again. And he wants to climb to the top of the climbing frame in parts by himself, which is why we're going to go to the park. And he wants to self-propel his wheelchair without going around in circles. So we're currently working on those goals, but we're taking a very holistic approach. We're going into school, we're educating the teacher and the teaching assistants with regards to what activities they can do or how they strategically place objects in front of him to get that movement of that upper limb going. And we're providing lots of education and support to home as well. That's it. So that's done. We're just on the end here. I don't know if anyone wants to take a photo. We've just put some useful references or links. One of them is to the Royal College of OT website regarding the tiered approach, the gross motor function classification system that we referred to, and referral criteria and our service resources website. At the bottom bullet point there, that is a really nice continuing education article from the American Association of OT explaining the co-op approach, and it's a really nice readable format, so please do take a picture. Thank you.